Hello and welcome to Homo Politicus. This is one program, of course, where we take a look at topical issues and matters happening around the world, and of course, take a deep dive into every one of them with creative and concise analysis on how and why it happened in the first place. My name is Henry Igwebike, and today we're taking a look at everything happening in Syria. An end of an era, people would call it, as President Assad's 24-year rule comes to an end as rebels seize Damascus. Syria's government appears to have collapsed as opposition fighters claim to have entered Damascus amidst heavy gunfire and explosions. President Bashar Assad reportedly fled the country, with sources confirming his departure to Russia. Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and senior army officers corroborated the reports. And of course, the Prime Minister Mohammed Ghazi Jalal announced the government's willingness to transition power to the opposition, urging citizens to avoid damaging public property. The White House confirmed the monitoring the situation, but as at the time of a report said that they were unaware of Assad's location. This marks a significant turning point in Syria's conflict, signaling the potential end of Assad's regime. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have our conversation. And doing that with me is Emeka Madonago, journalist, public affairs analyst. Thank you so very much, Emeka, for being part of our show today.
It's my pleasure. Hello, viewer.
Thank you so very much. So let's look into this particular matter. 54 years of Assad's dynasty in the making. From 1971 up until yesterday, 2024, the Assad's dynasty family has been at the focal point of Syria's rule, particularly his father, Hafiz, who has always been there. He was in charge of the Ba'athist party and took power in 1971 and proclaimed himself, the leader of that particular party and the country itself. I'd love you to maybe unearth what we have today, starting from how it was in 1971 when the family took over power.
Yeah, well, of course, the way things actually came about in Syria, was the rise of this, family to prominence, and now they later entrenched themselves in power. Of course, at that time, the father embraced the United States, and he was allies with the United States. He was in good terms with the United States. But the son now began when he came into power, began to look eastward. And then he turned his back on the United States. And then by then, there had been much disenchantment with his rule, such that, it fueled the rise of extremist groups and, also Al-Qaeda. But the main group, the HTS, that led the, onslaughts that culminated in the fall of his regime, that was 8 years, had renounced ties with Al-Qaeda. So, but there are there are insinuations that this was actually the handiwork of the United States.
Which exactly? This current...
that the fall of Assad was actually the handiwork of the United States. That even though the United States claims that the Islamic State, has been dismantled, with the killing of its top leaders, but that this is another way of bringing IS back to power, unwittingly, but those are just conspiracy theories and conjectures. But all in all, after 54 years in power, the saying that the cliche that empires don't last forever, has become ever more, ever so true. And that is the situation Syria has found itself.
Beautiful. But let's take a look at, of course, you did talk about the United States helping to make this possible. But the United States government have come to say that as much as they love what's happening in Syria, they are opposed to the HTS, being the ones in charge of the government. Now, let's not forget, the HTS is equally a fragment of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, which the United States government had carried out about 71 attacks in the last couple of days against ISIS. So tell me, how do you think this would snowball into a faction of an insurgent group that you are not in sympathical with, you are not in bed with, coming into power? Do you think the United States of America would really be excited? How do you think they would navigate this relationship?
Well, of course, we go back to the beginning. Assad, his father, Hafiz al-Assad, his father, actually came to power in 1970. Then it was hailed as a corrective movement, Then he now tried to empower his minority Alawi, ethnic group. But now he then rose to become an authoritarian leader, a tyrant, a dictator, a despot, And in time, of course, yes, it was a bloodless coup, but, of course, for despots to stay in power, they have to be able to accuse so many people, of all kinds of unimaginable, of all kinds of horrible things. And that's why, the inhuman detention, the inhuman torture that its perceived opponents had to go through, they were made to go through, became a hallmark of, the father and the son, the regimes of the father and the son. If you listen to what people who escaped from Aleppo's prison, Aleppo prison, when after the regime was overthrown on Sunday, the horrors. One man described how, he saw his brother-in-law, some detainees were brought to the prison, Aleppo, and he saw his brother-in-law. But his brother-in-law had legs before. But by the time he was seeing him, he had been amputated. And he had lost his mind. Then another described seeing an old man, an elderly man, in the last stages of life, how he was tortured and covered in blood. Assad must be brought to justice. Bashar Assad must be brought to justice.
But looking at the asylum that he has been granted in Russia, yes, do you think it's possible for the international community to bring him to justice?
It's to prevail on him, because even Putin himself, there
has cases to answer.
Yes, has a case to answer. Yes, human rights atrocities.
Ukraine.
So now adding Assad to the now adding Assad to the list, it only tells you, how tyrants, form a club, a club of the conniving, if you permit that, club of the conniving, where conniving, brutal, ruthless dictators, can find comfort. But the good thing is that, of course, the statutes on torture, the statutes on human, on crimes against humanity, have been, upgraded and have been strengthened. So no matter how Assad tries to run, he cannot hide. Of course, definitely Putin will not be in power forever. He will not live forever. So Assad should know that the people of Syria, the most important thing right now is for Syria to gain a semblance of normalcy, for a leader to emerge.
And you think it is actually possible? Remember, the man in charge of HTS now, Abu Muhammad al-Golani, has a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States of America. And he is in charge of the HTS now, which of course it's possible he might, metamorphose as the president of Syria if things continue the way they go. So how do you think it's possible to be in bed with your enemy for the United States?
Well, don't forget that his father, Hafiz al-Assad, that when he came, he formed a coalition. That was what he even used to deceive the people, in 1970, that he meant well. He formed a coalition, so he brought in so many people. So I hope now that of course, the Russia and Iran that were backing Bashar, that backed him up to a point where they refused to send him more arms, and that led to the collapse of the regime. I think by now, they must have realized their folly, because the destruction, it will take billions of dollars to rebuild Syria. Syria has been severely destroyed. So, talking about leadership, of course, there has to be a consensus one way or the other, as things progress. But the fear is that the worry is that Syria should not, fall into chaos.
Yeah, because people are actually afraid it might, snowball to the Libya issue, and equally the Lebanon, issue where there's no government, that people can say they can hold on to. So don't you think there's this scare that it might actually transition to that?
You see, one of the things about dictatorship is that it relies largely on propaganda, falsehood. It relies on, fissures, in different places, deepening fissures to promote division and bring instability, which was what Bashar Assad used a lot in the Middle East. So there was this regular tension in the Middle East, but now that it's out, of course, there will be reduced tension in the Middle East. Then, in terms of leadership, of course, you would expect that there will be pressure from behind the scenes, chiefly the United States and Russia, trying to use their leverage, to bring, to control the transition to power in Syria.
But on which side do you think it might likely go to? Because Turkey
Russia
is very interested. Turkey is very interested in, of course, it literally owns the HTS. Russia, it's been there supporting Syrian government, which I do not know if they will still be visible there. But the United States, of course, still has about 700 military men staged in Syria. Don't you think that might likely tilt towards Turkey?
No. It will tilt more in the direction of the United States. Why the Democratic Party, which we could say would have just folded its arms and watched as the situation deteriorated, will be is leaving power in a matter of days. So the Republican Party, of course, produced Donald Trump. Of course, Donald Trump, definitely by his rhetoric, looks very unlikely to allow the deterioration of the situation in Syria. Because Donald Trump has, by his utterances and actions, shown that he favors, an international system devoid of
war,
conflict, yes, of wars, devoid of wars of attrition, So I see that the United States will take the upper hand here. If you look at Turkey, Turkey has tried its best not to get deeply involved in the Russia-Ukraine war.
Very true.
It has also tried its best not to get too deeply involved in the Israel, Lebanon, Hamas.
Yeah, definitely.
Turkey has tried this way and
it
that
meanders,
way.
Just like Egypt equally does.
Of course, Egypt definitely has done its best to stay away. It was only maybe until recently, the summit, I think, hosted in Saudi Arabia, where they're talking about the future of Gaza, that Egypt, came out to feature. Otherwise, Egypt has tried its best not to get trapped. Because the Middle East conflict is one kind of thing that could easily, lead to unforeseen dimensions. Unforeseen dimensions. I mean, 1 minute you're talking about signing agreement, two-state solution, between Israel and Palestine. All of a sudden, it snowballs into Hamas, descending on Israel, some parts of Israel on October 7, 2023. Then now leading to an escalation to Lebanon, then further to Iran, Then you can see that Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, even Qatar that hosts the headquarters of Hamas, has been very, very careful. Now, all of a sudden, look at the twist. Hamas and the Fatah party are now discussing, how power will be shared in the future Gaza. Whereas Israel doesn't want Hamas to exist any longer. So how do you put all of these things together? Look at Syria. The various groups look at Yemen too. You have to also look at Yemen. So all these groups of fighters, allied to different causes. I believe, of course, Donald Trump has shown, a capacity to accommodate Russia in its foreign policy plans. So I believe, based on that,
so it's possible for people who are
possible for him to, influence Putin, to say no, that we shouldn't allow this to escalate. Okay, give up Bashar Assad for trial in the International Criminal Court, so that tensions can, de-escalate. Because I believe that Israel might be interested in the, how the Syrian conflict, how it pans out. Israel, I believe, might be interested in how it pans out, for its own security, because Syria is a neighbor.
Yes, very
so that you don't find Hamas potting to Syria because of this stability, and then now gaining strength.
To launch back.
Yes, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and all of those different groups, also allied with them. You talked about Libya. Yes, power vacuum in Libya, even though there's a semblance of governance. But you see, that's one of the problems with unpopular rule. And that's why it's necessary for the world not to tolerate strong men, but to talk about strong institutions.
Very, very true.
There's this argument that strong men stabilize societies. But I tell people, show me which societies. You've had benevolent dictatorships, but how come when the benevolent dictator, when he passes away or his government collapses, what's happened? Why does this nation descend into chaos?
Very true. Because, yes, I actually wanted to ask, because history is repetitive. All the things happening today have happened in the past, but unfortunately, those in the present fail to learn from the past. Now, let's domesticate what's happening in the Middle East to Africa, particularly in Nigeria, where it is becoming very disturbing, especially in our political space in Nigeria, where one man wants to take over everything, seem to want to take over everything, yes, which of course is panning towards what we have today, where one man wants to own everything. One man feels that everything should be driven to him, directly or indirectly. Don't you think that the failure to learn from history might have a repetitive consequence like what is seen today in Syria, possibly in Nigeria?
No, I just hope we don't fall into the situation in Syria. First of all, that we don't have a coup. I'm against coups. I'm against the military returning to power, because they have not shown the capacity to deliver better governance than civilians. So I then also hope and pray that Nigeria continues to build on democracy. You see, it's a sad thing about politicians all over the world, these illusions of, empire builders. Where is the Roman Empire today? Where is the British Empire? All the empires are dead. They're all gone. They're all gone. Where is communism? Dead. So the thing is, with time, people begin to get tired of seeing your face. They begin to get tired of your system, because you will now be fighting hard to entrench yourself. You see, the beautiful thing about democracy is the plurality, is that it gives room for a plurality of views. But when you now want to entrench a one-party system, you are setting up you're just setting up the polity for disaster, because it will never happen. You can only get to a point where it will all disintegrate. You see, in the case of Nigeria, you have only 4 years, first term. You can rig your way through second term. Look at what happened in Rivers State. The former governor, Nyesom Wike, trying to control. It's not working. You might say, yes, it has worked in Lagos, but what happened with Akin Umiambode? What happened with Babatunde Fashola? Tinubu fell out with them. There was a plot to impeach Fashola. If not that he moved very fast, you know, and was able to stave off, you know, the plot, he would have been impeached. So how come Lagos, the smallest state in Nigeria, how come that even there, during the last election, the presidential election, Tinubu was defeated in Lagos? How come? How come even up till now?
If there's a free and fair election.
Of course, if there's a free and fair election, overseen by an independent arbiter, Tinubu will even beg for votes. I can assure you of that. So this illusion, you know, the society is largely impoverished, you know, and so politicians throw so much lies, propaganda, falsehood, for which they should be jailed to divide the people, you know, and what do you get? A polity that fights against itself, instead of people joining hands together to build up the polity. What they are doing is fighting each other. The same politicians who stoke the fires will come and say, no, we are one Nigeria. Where is it? But you are the destroyers of the one Nigeria. So I think Nigerians must also, that's why we should encourage education. We must continue to encourage people to get educated. You know, I'm talking about, it's different from being certificated. People there's a campaign I have, you know, that people read a book, read at least one book every month. You know, that people should read a book, you know, read books and get educated, get exposed, you know, get better inspired by, you know, better ideas. Don't think that within your ethnic enclave or religious enclave, that's where all the best ideas reside. You know, there are better ideas out there. And we can only achieve development, growth, you know, through inclusivity, you know, when we develop sincere inclusivity, not the type that Assad's father, Hafiz Assad, you know, pretended to, you know, enunciate with the, you know, corrective movement. What was he correcting? He ended up, he and his son ended up even becoming worse, bigger problems to Syria than the father pretended to be solving. So what we must entrench is like what is happening in Ghana. You don't see a situation where the president's son is talking of running for governor.
Exactly.
These things are
or even found, you know,
around
the corridor of power.
You don't see such things. These are the early signs that democracy is under threat. You don't see such signs. Yes, maybe they can be part of the party, you know. I mean, when the president is traveling or anything, but you don't even permit a situation where it is said that the president's son has a role in the choice of cabinet members, security chiefs, and all of that. These are the things that have the potential of destroying democracy. This father son, look at what's happening in the Equatorial Guinea. Highly endowed with, you know, petroleum, you know, crude oil. But look at, the people are largely poor. Why? Because the government there, you know, has, the family, one family, the Basoko family has turned the country's treasury to, you know, a family survivor fund. And then you see Hufebwanye, Paul Biya, in Cameroon.
Yeah.
Look at, is it Eyadema in Togo? Name it. But next door to them is Benin Republic that's been able to transit from dictatorship to, you know, participatory democracy. And then here and there. But we hope that, you know, look at like in Namibia, look at in Botswana. We hope that those areas that are shining lights, you know, that gradually the light will shine more brightly, you know, to those dark spots in Africa, you know, so that we can join the rest of the world, you know, to promote and propagate participatory democracy. You've seen in Russia, Putin is an absolute ruler.
Yeah.
What is he living? Is he living? Is he
The
convenient
best of
for
life,
him?
yeah.
Is he having the best of time? The answer is no. Name it. Which country? Which country? Even China China is ruled by a committee. It's not a one-man dictatorship. It's by a committee. Because when you had Chairman Mao, look at the disastrous rule he brought to China, where he shut the borders and all that. Look at the millions of people who died. This man was just one primary school teacher who didn't have much, experience with leadership and all of that. But when he left, when he died, and there was a transition of power, to Deng Xiaoping, you saw how China moved away from that pretentious system, of communism.
To transparently opening up its borders and allowing people
to a market-based economy.
Yeah, which of course is the reason China is the industrial hub of the world today.
And not just that, look at how China has also been able to help other nations using the Belt and Road Initiative, has been able to help African nations, shameless African nations like Nigeria, to develop their rail network, to develop areas that they should have been able to develop themselves. Look at somebody said that so Nigeria has not been able to do anything about railway. Or it was the British colonialists who first brought railway to Nigeria. Then now, then later we brought in India, rights of India. Then later we brought in, China has now come in. So, and yet, we still have vertical lines, rail lines. We don't have horizontal rail lines linking west to east. It's just south to north. And then when people talk about northern Nigeria and southern Nigeria, some people take umbrage. And I say, why are you taking umbrage? Go and take umbrage, direct your anger at the people who have refused to allow this country to thrive in diversity.
Very well said.
Because if you have horizontal and vertical lines, railway, highways and all of that, inclusivity and all of that, there won't be any need for some people to stand up and say, that, for instance, Igbo should leave Lagos, go away, this. You will not find such, because such things don't exist in a democratic system. But you now find people saying, let's break up Nigeria. And I ask a question. You want Nigeria to be broken, right? Do you have about maybe $10 billion which you can use to help the economy of any of the nations you find yourself? Or you think that, okay, just break up Nigeria and everybody will live happily ever after? It is not like that. It doesn't work like that.
Very true.
First of all, the oil in Niger Delta will cease to be, our collective patrimony. It will cease. Even the Niger Delta itself will have a problem, trying to settle the disparate groups.
Exactly.
Trying to settle issues of ownership.
Ownership, exactly. Because there will be lots of pockets interest and all.
You think the Southwest will just be like that? Oh, where? Will you be willing to pay the price? Will you be willing to pay higher taxes? Will you be willing to deal with the fallout? Yes, we might say we have a pretentious federalism. No, it's because of the kind of politicians we have. Selfish, wicked politicians. If we had selfless, patriotic politicians, let me tell you, it's not difficult to rally Nigerians around for national development. It's not difficult.
Very true.
Look, the other Nigerian doesn't have any problem with his neighbor. He doesn't have any issues with his neighbor. It is politicians who try to make issue where there is none. And that's why it looks like, oh, we're divided. Oh, this side is crying marginalization. Oh, this side is better endowed than this side. Oh, these people are lazy. Who is lazy? If we stop getting supplies of foodstuff from the north down to the south, I ask people a question. Is there any new technology whereby you can make sure you put cassava in the ground today? Because one issue will be food security. There must be availability of food. Will you be able to put cassava in the ground today and harvest it tomorrow? Because people can't wait. Will you be able to put yams, the yams we get from Benue and Plateau? Will you be able to? Do you have a technology whereby you can put yam in the ground and you harvest it tomorrow morning? But what are you going to eat today? And so on and so forth. Palm oil and all of these things. You might say, okay, yes, you have all these things here. To what degree?
To what degree?
What quantity?
Exactly.
So,
fit in and,
coming to our topic, despotism should be gradually dismantled anywhere it is in the world. Let there be participatory democracy. There is no super race in the world. People have made efforts over the years. oh, this is a super race. There is nothing like that. We are all born equal. According to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he said all men are born, we hold these facts to be inalienable and true, that all men are born equal.
Very true.
So don't ever make the mistake of thinking that, oh, I'm the only person. Like you see some people say, oh, you are the only person who can rule Nigeria. They told Abacha that at the end of the day, Abacha was found to be a thief, a looter, pillager of the Nigerian treasury. And name it. Look at all the corruption all over the place. Look at the former central bank governor, Emefiele, who was actually trying, with a sense of entitlement to assert his right to become the president of Nigeria. But look at all the charges that he had not become president, but look at all the charges. So there is no superhuman being. There is no super race. Participatory, inclusive democracy is the way out. Anywhere
Beautiful.
you want.
Thank you so very much. Participatory, inclusive democracy is the best bet, and I sincerely want to believe that the lessons that we have seen from Syria as against the Al-Assad family, would be taken home, particularly to in our country, in Nigeria, so as to avoid a situation where one man wants it all, which of course never ends well. Thank you so very much, Emeka Madongo, for being part of our show today. And thank you also for equally making our picture complete on Homo Politicus. But please do well to visit us. You can always find and reach us at enterprisetvnews.com, and also like, comment, and follow us on all our social media platforms at Enterprise TV7. I am Henry Wibike. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow for yet another great time on Homo Politicus. Bye-bye.